Good morning, President Warner and board members. What I'd like to do this morning is provide you with a brief overview of what is known as the RSA process, which is the Request for Safety Assessment. And as Neil noted, the General Manager Safety and Service Excellence Task Force noted at that time that the process in place then was not effective in allowing operators and other employees to report safety concerns. There was a process in place. It was known as the yellow card process, which was a paper process, but for whatever reason, those issues that may have been raised at the time were getting lost. So the task force recommended that a new process be looked at and put in place. And such a process was then put in place in March of 2011. And as Neil said, time does fly. And then later in that year, it was expanded from the operators to all employees within TriMet. And essentially, this process was a means to allow employees to clearly define a safety concern that they may have and then to report it. But equally important, it was also a way that we would then provide feedback to the employees as to specifically what was being done. As you recall, the state did an audit of various operations within TriMet, and one of those was the number of safety processes. And what the state found was that there really was a need to improve the RSA process. I want to go back just for a moment and explain also that as part of the RSA process, we would solicit feedback from employees as to how well they perceive the process working. Did it meet their particular need? And then based upon that, we would make improvement. But what the state audit found was that there was still another need to better communicate the purpose and effectiveness of the RSA process to all employees. And that there was still some confusion with that old yellow card process. And at times, employees were even reluctant to express a concern because they felt that their concerns were not being addressed. So just for a moment, what I'd like to do is explain what is the RSA process, and essentially there are 5 steps to it. It is a web-based process. We've eliminated the paper because we felt that paper does get lost, and that was one of the issues with the yellow card process. And it allows for an employee to enter the concern onto a website. The problem with that is not all employees are computer literate, and they may not necessarily have access to a computer either. So that was an issue that we found. Also, this allows us as the safety department to review the concern. We meet monthly to go over each one of the RSAs that are submitted. And we coordinate all of this with other staff, principally with the operations staff, to address the particular concerns. The findings of that review are noted and then transmitted back to the employee, and appropriate action is taken. Or if no action was being taken, an explanation as to why that was the case. Nevertheless, we knew that from the audit that there was a need for improvement. So we actually met with every single safety committee within TriMet and asked the basic question of how do we better communicate with you, the safety committee? How do we communicate with the frontline employee better? And how do we measure if the communication is successful? So we work closely with our communications staff to find answers to these particular questions. And what we found was that that there was a need to better communicate with the safety committees themselves, that often we were not bringing the specific RSAs to the committees, and we were now going to do that because gaining their insight and guidance was important to improving the RSA process and understanding the safety concerns that were raised as well. To help formulate the exact process, we also developed a standard operating procedure, and that was not an exercise in bureaucracy, but it is one of the means of communicating with our workforce as to what is the specific process. So it is a requirement that frontline employees be familiar with SOPs in general, and this is one communication tool. So again, it wasn't to be bureaucratic about this, but rather this was another means of communication. The other thing that we found was we were not communicating with the initiators as frequently as we had thought we were. So rather than providing periodic updates, we formalized the process in providing much more specific timelines for when we would provide the feedback with the initiator. At times, the whole process takes several weeks and perhaps even months, depending upon what the issue is, because we may have to coordinate with a local jurisdiction. Some of the safety concerns raised are really beyond the control of TriMet and really fall into the realm of the local jurisdiction. The other finding was that there is a link that is posted on our homepage in the intranet, and that link, however, was buried under all types of other communication. So we made it much more prominent, and if you note on the lead slide, I have it here, it says RSA, and we actually use this icon to help identify where on the web page the request for safety assessment can be found. That change alone resulted in a 60% increase in RSAs. So we found that things get buried, are not easily identified, and people don't tend to hunt for them. So we wanted to make it much more prominent. We also promoted the concept through the RSA process through the employee newsletter. We are also looking at an alternate means of communicating their safety concern. And one of those means is a telephone hotline that they literally can call in the safety concern, and a safety staff member would then make the notation and enter the issue into the electronic system for them. And then obviously they can approach their supervisor or manager and make the request for safety assessment as well. And that manager would then help them input the required information. One of the things that is happening is that we are adding the RSA process to the new employee orientation. So when a new operator comes on board, this is going to be made known to them, or if the maintenance employee comes on board, this is also going to be made known to them. They're not going to have to hunt for it and learn of what is that process. And another piece that's currently under development is developing a search tool. Right now it's rather cumbersome. It's cumbersome for the safety staff to use it. That will allow an employee to go in and to search their specific request and what is the specific status. This is in addition to receiving that written communication as to what the status is. It also allows other employees to learn of what other safety concerns have been raised, and we will be posting these a list of the RSAs that have been submitted in each of the operator report areas and in the maintenance areas. So these are just some of the improvements that we're making to the process. The last slide shows we've created this dashboard. This dashboard also can be found on the website, but if you look at 2014, the slide only shows it through March. In April, we received 21 requests for safety assessments and closed out 29 for a year-to-date total of 66 received and 63 closed. So we're beginning to see more and more RSAs submitted, and we're attempting to address each and one of those and close them out quickly. Sometimes that becomes a bit of a challenge. So that's just a brief overview of the RSA process, and I don't know if anyone has any particular questions.
Just really quick,